So now it's just us talking, man.
All right, Dallas.
Nice to see your face again.
Good to see you.
We've been talking about doing this for a while, and obviously we've worked together on some other interesting projects. Not the least of which was the video I'm real proud of to have worked with you. The Warrior Code,
Right.
which we both know this, but talks about it is a story about two pilots during World War II that basically came up on kind of a moral dilemma scenario where one had to make a choice on whether or not to shoot the other one down. It's a great story. So I
Yes.
can drop a video link to that in the comments
Right.
once I post this. But, Dan, like I said, we've been talking about doing this for a while. We have so many things we can talk about. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, um, I'm 77 years old at this point in time. I'm retired from a career in teaching at both high school and university level. I'm also a veteran, Navy hospital corpsman who spent 3 of my 4 years in the military with the Marine Corps as a Fleet Marine Force corpsman and a Vietnam veteran, combat veteran as well. I have been married for 50 years as of last month. We have two daughters, and the oldest daughter has 2 girls, and our youngest daughter has 3 boys. So we have 5 grandchildren as well.
Wow.
Life is good.
So I know you're involved. That's amazing. And I know roughly what your military service consisted of, and we'll probably maybe get into that a little bit. But you were the real deal. You're still the real deal. I have a lot of respect for you, and that's why we're sitting here talking. So, as far as like what you do now with veterans, I know you're involved in different agencies. Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Well, I am involved with my local VFW post. I'm the chaplain for the post.
Okay.
In that capacity, I do a number of things that chaplains would have to do when called upon. Um, I also am in charge of what we call the relief fund, which is we get money for the relief fund by giving out poppies uh, for both Veterans Day and Memorial Day at local grocery stores and things like that.
Okay.
And that money then is all earmarked and dedicated to serving veterans. The VFW is very proud to say that they do more for veterans than any other organization. And that certainly is our goal. So we dedicate that money to several different uh, charitable sources that are all related to the veterans' experience. One of those is the National Home for uh, Children in Michigan, which we support. Some of the Fisher houses on
Okay.
the local VA campuses, the hospital campuses. We support a couple of retired veterans homes here in the local area. We give gift cards, several $1,000s worth of gift cards to the local the chaplains at the local military bases, the Air Force, the Navy bases, the Army base at it's Joint Base Lewis McChord, and then the Naval Base up here in Everett and Bremerton and so on, and a number of other things. We're very our post has been very successful at this, and we've been able to support a great number of veterans type organizations or organizations associated with veterans.
Well, okay, can I jump in real quick about that?
Yeah.
I think you just said a mouthful, and I think something that keeps kind of bouncing around in my head about the foundation that I run now, Warriors of the Wind, who hosts this podcast, is no one is more qualified to help veterans than veterans.
Absolutely.
I think a critical mistake we make as a demographic, as a microcosm of American society, whatever you want to call it, is we expect others to understand us.
Yes.
They
And
can't.
they don't.
There's no
Right.
flipping way
That's
others
right.
can understand us like we understand each other. You
Right.
know, when you, Dan, says to your average civilian, "Yeah, I was a recon corpsman in Vietnam," they go, "Okay, you know, that
Right.
sounds like something." When he says it to me as a fellow Marine, I'm like,
I
you
got
know,
you.
it's a whole different experience.
Right.
It's because I know roughly what that means.
Right.
So we cannot expect, as veterans, we cannot expect civilians to understand the things that we go through, the things that we have to readjust to when we come home from war. Uh, you know, the when we what do they call it? Institutionalization of the military
Right.
is a big thing that
Right.
people don't understand. So you take an 18-year-old kid,
Yes.
put them in the military, they've got no real life experience other than being a child.
Right.
And next thing you know, off they go into their real life as a Marine, soldier, sailor. Um, and that is what they know,
Yep.
whether it's 4 years or 20 years.
Yeah, and there are many dimensions to that too.
Exactly.
Not the least of which is that for many, it was a major step in growing up, leaving adolescence behind and starting to take on responsibilities. And you know that the other reality, of course, is that some of us end up going off and having to experience real combat situations. But even in that sense, those of us that were, for example, in Vietnam, it was still a small minority that were actually in combat units that were experiencing direct on combat. Although everybody who was there was in one way or another in combat zone and could be affected directly.
Okay. So I promise you today we're just gonna kind of ebb and flow and talk as friends because we've, you know, like I consider you an uncle at this point, kind of, you know, as I've told you. And
Back at you.
I just enjoy how we talk and communicate. So I'm curious, you know, out of your brain, out of your lips, what does combat veteran mean to you? Because that's a, you know, if you get into like the Facebook forums and everything, you get these guys, well, I was in Iraq, I was in Kuwait, you know, doing this number. And I'm like, I thought we were on the same team and pretty much all of us were getting shot at. Why is this an issue?
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
what do you think about that?
Well, I I I think quite similar to you. We were all in combat in Vietnam. There was no doubt about it. But there are some units. I just use the unit that I was in particular, the Third Recon Battalion, Third Marines. That was our job. We were to go out, snoop and poop around to find them before they found us, or to uh, uh, bring some action towards them before they could bring it towards us, and so on. So that was our job, and it's an infantry person's job too. To go out, that's what they're trained to do. Go out and do. But you have your uh, supply personnel. You have your major hospital, combat hospital personnel, and so on and so forth, whose jobs are not to go out and do that, but are directly related to the effectiveness of those people that go out and do that, or who take care of those who are uh, injured and in need of their kinds of services. Um, but given the circumstances of where we were in my war in Vietnam, every place was a combat area. Hospitals were hit with artillery and mortar fire, and or combat bases were attacked. Air bases were attacked by active artillery, rocket fire, mortar fire, and infantry attacks. You know, so everybody was in a combat zone. And I think that's just it's just the reality of the difference. Some people, some units are essentially trained to enter into combat directly. Others are support, but they're as much into it as we are, and we couldn't be effective without them.
So I can tell you just by virtue of the work that I do with veterans, which is really a lot of time it's just me asking questions and listening, just like this, in a whole lot of different ways. But I know from the standpoint of what I'll just call mental health recovery, when these guys come home from a combat zone, whatever combat zone looks like, feels like, means to them, the people that weren't physically kicking in doors, chasing the guys on the playing cards in Baghdad, for example, the guys who are out there, I'll speak to my Marines. They're out there turning wrenches on helicopters while getting bombed with Scud missiles.
Yes,
I've taken calls from those guys, and there's a recurring theme that I hear. I didn't do enough. And
yeah,
I'm like, what does that mean? Get hit with
yeah,
shrapnel?
yeah.
Like, what does enough look like to you? Because you were getting bombed while doing your job as a Marine.
Yes, and doing your job as a Marine made your pilots effective, and
Exactly.
I presume that many of them were, air support pilots, and some of them were medevac pilots. Every single thing that they did was absolutely necessary to the effectiveness of the people that were out there in the field uh, doing the direct on combat. And as I said, it was the same with in Vietnam. You guys were taking incoming,
Yeah.
and that's as threatening to you as a bullet from a rifle out in the field is to the combat
Well,
infantryman.
now, I think I can safely assume, and I promise you, we wouldn't get too into the weeds with combat experience, excuse me, but I'll just say, I'll just call it indirect fire.
Yes,
I will say I've got experience with that. And in my case, it was Scud missiles. We were in a known potential chemical weapons environment.
right,
Uh, and we had radar warning systems to indicate when we had incoming fire. Then we had Patriot missile batteries surrounding our base, shooting down, theoretically shooting down these weapons that were aimed directly at us.
right.
They're called indirect fire weapons because they're not laser guided munitions. But if they hit, they take out a city block.
There it is.
So it's like, fingers crossed, hope it doesn't get us today. But we had minimal cover,
Yep,
minimal protection. We
yep,
had to run to said cover to get to it.
yep.
And yet I've got guys that were out there doing their jobs as Marines that will tell me I didn't do enough. And I'm
Yeah,
like, really?
yeah. It's. I understand the dilemma there. It's an interpretation problem in
Yeah.
some way. You know, no, you were in combat. You were shot at. Shrapnel was uh, uh, part of your environment. Uh, a direct hit, anything like that, was part of your environment. So yes, you experienced part of what combat, uh, eh, uh, the general picture of combat can be. No, you weren't out there, aiming your rifle, although every Marine is a rifleman, and that's part of the issue too. Is that that's the attitude that we have is we're all riflemen, and you would be if the uh, unimaginable happened, and combat forces did enter the base, and you had to defend yourselves, and so on and so
Right.
forth.
Right. And
You
it's
you
happened.
would do
Camp
it.
Bastion that happened, a few years back,
Yep.
theoretical green zone. The next thing you know,
Yeah.
they're taking RPGs, blowing up helicopters, and all sorts of craziness. I've had a friend or two killed in green zones
Yep.
um, that were theoretically safe.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
It's. I think it's associated with a general human problem is that we create these artificial hierarchies of importance. That aren't necessarily objectively true. The reality is that you were in combat. Uh, I think it's a mistake to say, well, no, I can't put it that way. I understand people saying that we didn't do enough. I didn't do enough like so and so did, kind of thing. But I think it's an artificial difference. Uh, you were there, you answered the call, you did your duty, and you did it effectively and purposefully and meaningfully. That's as important and meaningful as the guys that were out uh, in combat in the field.
And the fact is, everybody now does it voluntarily.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yep.
I mean, it's less than 1% of America that serves in the military now. Less than
Yeah.
1%. I don't know the actual numbers anymore, but as America continues to grow, our
Yep.
percentage of people that have served gets smaller and smaller.
Yep. That's exactly right. Yep. And that's a problem too.
To say that you're out there, I mean, Dan, in your case, you were very literally the tip of the spear. I won't put you too much on a pedestal for everybody to know, but I mean, recon Marines, Vietnam, you hear places like Quezon, Dan was there.
Yep.
Uh, and he was taking care of Marines that were wounded. So I've got so much respect for this man. I can't begin to tell you. That's why I call him Uncle Dan now, because I know I can continue to learn from him. And now, I have a little bit of a social media platform where we're trying to do good things with podcasting and YouTube and all that. And
Yeah,
these stories need to be told.
they do.
The reason I was asking Dan about the VFW service or things that he does now is because I personally am very irritated and frustrated about the fact that my generation of veterans and younger continue to dwindle away from going to the VFW and learning from older veterans. And there's a huge tragedy in that.
There is. It's complicated though too, and I want to address it because it's something that we're all dealing with in the VFW as well. We do have uh, um, Iraq War and what is it called?
Afghanistan, Syria.
Well, we don't have anybody from Afghanistan, but we have people from Desert Storm and Iraq War. Um, they're in their 40s, 50s, yeah, and and the problem in some ways for them is that they're in the middle of their primary duties of providing for families and working, and they're in their middle of their professional lives and so on and so forth. And becoming a part of the VFW requires a certain ability to offer some time. You know, there's only a handful of people in the VFW post that have levels of responsibility that require them to give much more of their time to the post's responsibilities and so on. Most of the guys, they come to the meetings once a month. That's it, and
Yeah,
they'll raise their hands in support of a motion for doing something and so on and so forth. And that's really all that they're required to do. But it gives them a voice. It gives them a voice at the national level as well as the
exactly.
local level. And the VFW has been terribly important in bringing about the PAC Act, for example, in arguing for and supporting uh, a number of initiatives that directly affect veterans. So it is an opportunity to at least have a voice. Now, I just happen to, I was not a joiner. Uh, I have only been in the VFW post myself now, I think for about 8 or 9 years. But my personality is I don't know how to say no. And so,
I feel that.
yeah, I get drawn into this and I've been a chaplain now for most of that time. And I've also been a part of our honor guard rifle team, which has been a very valuable, very important thing for me to be a part of personally, as well as for what it does for families. It's an incredibly powerful gift to give to the families of the fallen.
Yes, sir.
to have that kind of um, respectful and uh, pomp and circumstance reverence
Reverence. Yeah.
for their fallen husband or son or wife or daughter or etc. is very, very important to the families. So it's an honor to be a part of that as well.
I've had the privilege recently, just in the last couple of months, of I think everybody at this point watching this podcast probably knows motorcycling is a big part of what my foundation does. Our foundation does. Warriors of the Wind is basically trying to create new ways for veterans to connect across the country,
Yes,
so we can kind of have a self. Um, I keep using is it promulgating or propagating, Mr. English guy?
promulgated,
Promulgate. Okay,
promulgated.
I get those mixed. I messed that up, but
That's all
no.
right.
Basically, we're trying to create a system, a program of warriors that it's like a big, giant check-in system across the country.
Yep.
My stretch goal, and I think it's very attainable, is to build a battalion of veteran motorcyclists that we personally go out, we seek them out, and we get them some help first.
Yeah.
Maybe they're recommended by a family member, like, hey, this guy, he's been kind of keeping to himself a lot. We're a little worried about him. We go out, we find them, we interview them just like this, and we say, what can we do to make your life a little bit better?
Right.
Have you tried motorcycling? Can we help you get trained as a motorcyclist so you can go out there and ride safely? And the thing is, once they get on a bike, their mental health gets better. They want to go check in on people because it gives them a reason to ride a motorcycle from point A to point B. That's all the reason they need.
Right.
So it motorcycles eliminate a lot of the, oh yeah, I'll call that guy some other time factor.
Right.
You have a reason other than just wanting to do good and checking on your friend. It gives you something selfish to enjoy too. You know,
Exactly. Yes, I think there's a couple of benefits in there that I don't ride a motorcycle. And I'm too old to ride a Harley because I'm not sure I could pick up that 900-pound beast and keep it
that's why I
going.
make trikes, Dan. We got to get you on a trike.
There you go. Now I could handle that. But there's an element of this that really touches veterans, and that is the element of camaraderie. It brings people together again in a sense of brotherhood and sisterhood. That you're doing it, you're riding together and kind of watching out for each other's six and so on and so forth. As you're going down the road. Uh, but it also gets you out. It gets you out into nature. It gets you out, not just physically, but mentally. It takes you out of the prison of your own mind where you can get caught up in all the negative thought or all the anxieties and so on and so forth that PTSD and can bring up, or that are associated with PTSD. And that's I think a very important element of what you're doing with the motorcycles. It gets people out, opens them up, enables them to get out in nature, which is a real healing reality, and it provides a camaraderie, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, I've actually invited a few celebrities to come out and join us just to try to, raise awareness of what we're doing, get the right people involved to help us.
Yes.
We're very actively fundraising. We're very actively seeking sponsorship from large companies. There's a lot of people that are interested in this now, and I'm,
Yes.
riding with clubs now that want to help us. And yeah, like you said, like getting out in nature is. I've been the guy sitting in his house depressed. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have had my mental health journey. Okay. I've been depressed,
Yes.
not even necessarily realizing how depressed I was. Um, and then, some life things happened and I truly downward spiraled for a while.
Yes.
Um, and motorcycling has been a major part of bringing me out of that. So my whole thing is, if it can do that for me, what can it do for our veterans? Because
Exactly.
let's talk about me and my girlfriend for a moment. Our first time meeting was October last year. The very next day, we went on a ride together. I borrowed her motorcycle. with 400 other veterans
Wow.
through a place called Arbery Loop, but it's not too far removed from Yosemite. Beautiful
Right.
mountains up at
Uh-huh.
7,000 feet. Some of these places in that area, and the, I'll just tell you that the military precision that comes with,
Mm.
let's say, close order drill in boot camp, for example,
Right. Right.
snap, pop, right shoulder, left shoulder, all that stuff. There's a direct correlation, and we all remember how that feels when you're really going in that. You feel truly amazing as a person because
Yes, you do.
you're
You
like a
feel like
robot with other robots. Snap, pop, click.
that's right. Yeah. You feel
And
a body, a unity.
motorcycling, same thing. I'll probably in this podcast, I'll probably throw a little snippet of a video I put together of motorcycles doing that formation stuff.
Yes.
And it's like the silent drill platoon,
Yeah.
but it's just understood.
Yeah.
We're all just okay. He moves, so I'm going to move back, forward.
Yeah.
And it's this beautiful symphony of things happening all at once with people that you understand.
Right.
So that's what really drives me. I'm getting all passionate now. Forgive me,
Well,
Dave.
but
I'm
it's
doing
a good
this
thing.
now.
Yeah,
But
it's a good thing. You're dealing with that whole sense of the camaraderie there. I want to just add another thing to the idea of getting out. If and you can relate to this, I think personally, is that you've been in the house depressed. What got you out of the depression is to go out and serve others who
yes,
are
absolutely.
in need. And then all of a sudden you realize that you don't have the depression anymore because you're not concentrating on yourself. You're dealing with the needs of another. That's healing. That's what's important.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah.
I'm really glad to hear you say that. You know, Dan and I have had some good conversations kind of offline, not podcast material, because it was him kind of patting me on the back, like, keep going, man, you got this,
Yeah.
because there are times where I get frustrated with this journey of, being a new guy running a nonprofit. I've been a long time business owner. I do understand business. I've educated in business. The nonprofit world's a different animal.
Yeah.
Social media is a different animal. Uh, what gives me confidence in this whole endeavor is just knowing that it's all coming from a good place. It's not
Right.
about me. It's about keeping Marines alive, my
Right.
Marines. Um,
Absolutely.
I've been personally affected by losing people to the isolation factor. I don't even like using the word suicide. I don't like that word. The more we say it, the more people think about it. So we need to focus on health, wellness, community,
That's right.
camaraderie, taking care of each other, check-ins.
Yep.
Don't focus on the whole 22 thing. It's the numbers inaccurate. I guarantee it. I've got
Yes.
evidence,
Yes.
all sorts of different evidence to that. But don't focus on the bad. Focus on what can we do to make it better for these guys.
Exactly. That's what it's all about. That's what VFW is about. That's what uh, 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 Catholic social justice is about. Uh, it's what the VFW is doing and what you're doing. It, it's about others. That's what gives life meaning and purpose. And the positivity of what can I do for others is more important than getting caught up in how I feel about myself.
Right. That beautifully said. Yeah, you really nailed that.
Mm.
Um, I think between the two of us, we have definitely a synergy and desire to make our own little dent in the world. Um, you know,
Dallas,
something that drives me a lot, wrong or whether right or wrong, something that truly drives my decision making process in life is, what is my obituary going to say? How am I going to be remembered?
uh,
What's my legacy? What are my kids going to say about
yeah,
me? And that was a tough one. Divorce does things, and I am divorced, and navigating the recovery of that process with my children.
right.
And this legacy of Warriors of the Wind for me, I know that it's doing good in the world. So there's things they may not understand about it now, but down the road, I think they'll see that, hey, Dad really cared about his fellow man,
Yep,
um,
yep.
and wanted to do good things. So that's something that I think about quite a bit.
I understand, and it's also important for both of us to recognize that uh, just for purposes of developing the virtue of humility, we are doing something, and in the largeness of the world and the issues, etc., that we're involved with, it's a little thing, but it's an important thing. It's the thing that I can do, and the good Lord gives the graces for it to be more effective beyond myself. It's I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to heal the world myself. I'm not going to heal another individual human being myself. I'm going to give them the opportunities to heal within themselves, to heal themselves by giving them the opportunities to get out into nature, to get out into that camaraderie, to tell their stories, to get their stories outside of themselves. This is one of the values of, for example, writing, to write about your experiences, because it takes them from inside out, puts them out on a concrete page. And so it's a little thing that I'm doing, but it becomes great in those that it affects, if that makes sense to you.
It makes absolute sense.
Yeah.
And I don't know okay, so I've been through a heck of a journey going from getting a motorcycle, getting my own mental health dialed in, getting happy, if you will, after being not so happy for a while, quite a while. And again, not necessarily being self-aware about how unhappy I truly was.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there's like, the fulcrum shifts and some things happen and you're like, oh, this is what happiness feels like. Okay, now I'm happy. What's my purpose now that I'm firing in all cylinders?
Yep.
Um, and so basically what happened with me was
Uh-huh.
I started a YouTube channel that led to one thing, led to another, led to another. Next thing you know, I'm in VFWs interviewing Vietnam veterans
Yes.
about their experiences coming home from war.
Right.
And they're talking about trying to keep the doors open at their respective VFWs. And there's so
Yep.
many layers to the research I've done with this. I've talked to suicide survivors
Yeah.
about what led to them deciding to do it and how relieved they are now that it didn't work.
Right.
It's been a very interesting journey, but I know it's going to do a lot of good in the end.
Yes. Yes. I agree. And I have great admiration for you doing that. And I understand also that in doing so, you're choosing to take on burdens of other people's stories. And that's a very Christ-like kind of thing to do. It has benefits for those that you're serving. Be aware of your own recognition that you're taking on some of those burdens, but that they're not yours.
Well, man, you said a mouthful, a big mouthful. I will say for me, this has been an extremely spiritual journey. I'm very cognizant of the fact that not everybody's a believer, and that is totally okay.
Absolutely.
Um, you know, I try to give people a nudge in that direction. If they don't want the nudge, okay, all right,
Yep.
respect you. We can both do our own thing, but I can tell you this: um, for me, all self empowerment that I have at this point in my life
Yeah.
is spiritually led. Um,
Yep.
whether it's you can use God, you can use the
Right.
universe, you can use quantum physics if you want to.
Yeah.
I talk about the reticular activated system in my brain a lot. There's
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff that falls
Yeah.
into this, but at the end of the day, my self belief at this point that allows me to do these things is coming from faith. It's coming from being connected to the right people.
Yep.
It's coming from being clear headed, getting enough sleep.
Yep.
Um, you know, I leave
Yeah.
the substances alone for the most part. Well, I don't drink,
Yeah.
um, and I like being clear headed. Uh,
Yes.
so
Can I reflect something on you?
yes, please.
Your present sense of consolation is directly related to the fact that you found purpose and meaning.
Absolutely.
That's what heals. That's that is what equals happiness. You find purpose with your life. And when you find purpose, it gives your life meaning. That's the source of happiness.
Amen, man. That's I always this is why I call you an uncle, because you always give me these little tidbits of wisdom that aren't little; they're big tidbits of wisdom. But you're absolutely right. When you find that purpose, maybe your purpose is, I got friends that are into animal rescue, for example. I've been exposed to those people this past year quite a bit. That's their purpose. That gives them meaning. For me, protecting my fellow veterans is what makes me feel like doing the most good.
Right.
Um, but once you have, I was just talking to another Marine about this recently. Once you find that purpose and you start really drilling down into what am I supposed to do with this? Maybe it's a gift that God gave you. Maybe it's
Yeah.
that gut feeling that you need to be doing something.
Yes.
But embrace it. I mean, if you have that feeling, you've got to embrace it and roll with it. Forget the naysayers. If they're not going to support what you know is your true self, they're not real friends.
That's right. That's right. You got that right.
So I really encourage people to do a few things. Be sober,
Yep.
listen to your inner voice, act on your inner voice,
Right.
talk to God or the universe or whatever.
Yeah.
Because if you're not doing those things, you're kind of, I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but for me, I was floundering.
Yeah.
I was having a hard time in virtually every area of my life,
Right.
because I didn't know, I wasn't sure why I was still here.
Hmm.
I thought I was just kind of floating around. I didn't want to get out of bed in the morning. I had a
Yeah.
lot of negative self talk. Um, I never really took the time to grieve,
Yep.
for the people I've lost over the years, and there's been many.
Yep.
Um, but doing this with the foundation is truly a calling for me, and it's definitely one that I embrace. So I will
You
do every bit of good that I can. I will connect with as many organizations as I can,
right.
fundraise, get out in front of people, talk to them.
Yep.
I'm already talking to the generals, politicians,
Yep.
because we need this.
We do. There's no doubt about that. And I'm sure you're starting to feel some support as well
Yes.
from outside, and that's a good thing. What you're doing is good, and what you're doing is right. Please just keep it up. Yes, and amen.
I mean, that's it for me. I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to, is what I keep kind of leaning on.
That's right. It's
Because again,
you.
I flailed around for a long time, just trying to make my own way. Yeah, I want to be. The reason I'm good at these films and stuff is I was a photographer for 20 years, but I was flailing around. I wasn't able to monetize it. I was good at it.
Yeah.
I was entering photo contests and doing well and that kind of stuff. But like,
Right.
I'd never really had a purpose with it. I wanted to be in National Geographic, and I ended
Yeah.
up sort of kind of doing that. But that was my only real goal. With this, I'm impacting people's lives.
Exactly.
That's a whole different animal than trying to get a picture in a magazine.
There's no greater thing to do.
So, I mean, I'm really proud to be able to say that I'm following my heart on this one. I am listening to God. Um, I'm acting when I think a lot of people would just kind of go, too much work. I'm still rolling with it.
Yep.
Um, there are plenty of people that don't understand what I'm trying to do that are talking a bunch of ancillary comments in the background that I have to tune out, white noise, because I don't
That's
need
right.
that.
Yeah.
They
Yeah. You
don't
don't.
understand, and that's fine.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's their problem, not yours.
It used to be my problem until I finally learned how to
I
tune it
understood.
out.
Yes,
It takes a while.
I understand. Yeah.
But
It's tough being a human being, man.
at the end of the day, if you're listening to your heart
Yeah.
and you're acting on faith, whatever that means to you, doing the right thing, following your true north, you, you're going to put out good energy into the world. And I think everybody wants to do that on some level.
That's right. I want to add something.
Please.
I just said it's tough being a human being, but it's also the most glorious thing you could possibly be in its fullest sense. Because in its fullest sense, it means that you are a person for others. That's not about me. It's about others. And and the benefits come, but not that's not what you're looking for. You're looking for serving others. When those others get served and feel the benefits of that service, you get your benefits. You don't have to talk about them or show them off or anything else. You just be thankful. Gratitude is the greatest prayer.
Yes, absolutely. And I can't say enough good things about the people that I'm surrounded by right now that are selflessly giving their time to the foundation, supporting us in various ways. I mean, there's a lot of positive things happening right now that I'm so grateful every day when I get out of bed. I'm just like, people are actually helping me now.
Yeah, it's a great thing. Yeah, those are the benefits that are coming your way. Enjoy them.
Well, I've said many times, and keep in mind, I ride a motorcycle to do this, and I've ridden in some very dangerous places doing some. Well, let's just say I've had to be pretty bold in some of these things in putting out a message,
Right.
and the message is we're going to come for you and help
Yes.
you. And I've taken my own way of doing that, and I don't know how effective it is sometimes, but I'm just showing like if you're homeless on the street, I'm going to come find you at 2 o'clock in the morning in San Francisco. I did some of that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. I was working with some nuns talking about going down to Tijuana to help people on the streets.
Yes.
So this has been very interesting, very multifaceted,
Huh.
and I just kind of roll with it and hope for the best.
Yes. You just reminded me. I've been working on my own poetry lately, so just reminded me of a poem. I'll send you copies of these.
Please do, and feel free.
Uh,
Maybe I can even list it here on the podcast.
right. Um, about there's an area in Seattle called Pioneer Square, and it's probably quite similar to certain sections of San Francisco. Big market there, Pike Place Market, and things like that. And there's always you always run into the groups of young people that are all gothed up and nose rings and spiked hair and all the other
All the
rev-
things, yeah.
all the revolutionary stuff. And the poem is about a young nun that comes in down there every day and walks among these people, these young kids, and she sees beyond their masks. She sees the beauty behind the masks, and she just addresses them in that sense, loves them in that sense. And the question at the end of the poem is, which is the true revolutionary? and that's a very real um, it's a very real part of our existence today in this culture. Everybody thinks they're being revolutionary, but they're not.
Dan, I'll
The real
make you a deal.
revolutionary is you.
I'll make you a deal. If you can get me that poem sent to me, I will, with your permission, I'll make a special video. I'm editing a bunch of footage from where this whole thing exploded for me in San Francisco. I'm going back and going through old video files that I haven't
Uh-huh.
looked at in almost a
Yeah,
year.
it would
And
fit.
I'll be putting out some interesting content. So, with your permission, I'd like to put your poem over
Absolutely.
some of that footage because that's a really powerful thing you just said.
Okay, absolutely.
And
I'll
I
send you.
love working with you on these creative projects because we
Yeah,
just have
all
this
right.
incredible synergy between us. So,
Well, that's my gift is I write. So and that's how I'm serving today too. I do have a little paid job, and it's doing writing for a site, and uh, it's all based on scripture and theology and moral and social justice and things like that. That
well,
that's
it's fun.
how that's
Uh,
how I get my things out. But my poetry, I've been writing poetry for 60 years, so
wow.
I've got a couple of pieces I'll send you. I think a couple of them could be very effective in dealing with uh, the veterans that you're dealing with. Uh,
I will,
give you
I'll put them to good use as best I know how.
Yeah. Okay. I'll be glad to send them to you.
Um, well, I think I shared with you earlier, kind of offline before we started the podcast, that I've got a family event to call into. I'm going to try to check out a cross country event.
There you
I'm
go.
running a little late for it, so I think man, I never want to stop talking to you. We have such great conversations. So
Yeah,
I
it is
hope this
good.
is like the first in a series of podcasts, to be honest with you.
Amen. Yeah, that'll
Um,
be great.
I
Good,
think
good luck.
between the
Good
two of
luck.
us, we can help a lot of people.
I amen to that. And good luck with her cross country event. I'm going to a granddaughter's cross country event tomorrow.
All right. Well, good luck to her
She's
as well.
doing very well.
All right.
All right.
Well, Dan, thank you so much for your time, sir. It's truly an honor. I really enjoy this. So.
Likewise, Dallas. Likewise.